3 weeks before the wedding, I got a call that didn't even last 2 full minutes. I was in the laundry room, kneeling in front of the washer, my hands still damp from separating Logan's shirts. He never could remember to turn them inside out when the phone rang. "Claire?" Juliet's voice came through, sharp as glass but coated in honey. "Hey, I just wanted to say something quickly." I stood up slowly, wiping my hands on a towel, phone tucked between my shoulder and ear. "What's going on?" I asked, already sensing something was off. There was a pause, a tight little breath. "It's just that, I think it might be better if you don't come to the wedding." I didn't say anything, not because I didn't have anything to say, but because I didn't know how to wrap a scream into one neat sentence. My fingers gripped the towel, twisting it tighter and tighter. "I don't mean that in a bad way," she added quickly, like a doctor saying you'll feel a pinch right before they break you open. "It's just, you make me uncomfortable. We want peace that day. And honestly, your energy doesn't feel peaceful." Still, I said nothing. Just one breath. Then one word. "All right." That was it. I heard the exhale of relief on the other end. Like she thought she'd won something. Like she believed I'd folded. But what Juliet didn't know, what she still doesn't understand, is that silence isn't the same thing as surrender. That phone call was the worst mistake of her life. I didn't tell Logan. I didn't tell anyone. Instead, I stood in that laundry room for a long time, staring at the dryer cycle, blinking end over and over, like it was mocking me. A week ago, I was finalizing table runners and centerpiece quotes. Now I was being erased, like I was never part of the story. And that's what stung the most. Not the exclusion itself, but how easily it came to her, like flicking lint off a sleeve. I'd always been careful with Juliet, from the very beginning. When she forgot my birthday, I let it slide. When she said my lasagna was a bit too rich and offered to bring her own gluten-free version to Thanksgiving, I smiled and told her I couldn't wait to try it. I kept quiet when she told the wedding planner ivory didn't suit my skin tone, her exact words, as if my shade was some kind of offense, and suggested I wear navy or charcoal to complement the palette. I bit my tongue so often around her, it was a miracle I had any taste buds left. And through all that, I kept giving. I paid for the venue deposit, the catering tastings, and the imported white orchids Juliet claimed reminded her of her childhood in Bali, though when pressed, she never quite remembered which island. I told myself it was for Logan, because that's what moms do. We make space, we smooth over, we stay quiet so our children can feel like their lives are blooming. But then she uninvited me. Not Logan, not both of them together, just her, Juliet. And if she did ask him, if he agreed, if he knew, that thought was worse than the phone call. Because Logan, my Logan, was the boy who once cried when a frog he was keeping in a shoebox died overnight. The boy who snuck out of a middle school dance to help me carry groceries when my back gave out. The one who used to whisper, "Mom, you're the best woman I'll ever meet," after every bad dream. The idea that he might sit silently while his fiancée dismembered our relationship with a single sentence. No, I couldn't face that. So I kept going. I cleaned out the guest room where relatives were supposed to stay. I canceled the dress alterations. I ignored the stack of invoices for things I was still paying off, calligraphy, cocktail tastings, lounge furniture for a photo moment. I told myself this was motherhood, loving even when it gut punches you, giving even when you're bled dry. But deep down, something wouldn't settle. It wasn't just the pain of being excluded. It was the way she said it. That cool certainty, that scripted cruelty, that surgical precision. She wasn't afraid I'd cause a scene. She was afraid I'd see something. That night, after the dishwasher had hummed its last cycle and the house settled into stillness, I sat at my kitchen table with a glass of water and opened my laptop. Not to snoop, I told myself. Just to remember. To feel like I still existed in this story. I searched for pictures from the engagement party. The one I hosted, paid for, catered, cleaned up after. Juliet had posted one photo from it. Just one. I wasn't in it. I scrolled through her profile. Smoothie bowls, staged beach shots, blurry quotes about curating your highest self. All artificial, all shiny, all controlled. And then, I hit a photo. Older, not polished, not filtered. Juliet, her hair longer, no makeup, standing next to a man I didn't recognize. They were in front of a courthouse. She wore white, not a wedding gown, but a dress. Simple, bridal adjacent. The caption, "Forever starts today." I stared at it, dated 3 years ago, and just like that, everything clicked into place. I must have stared at that photo for 20 minutes. The caption, "Forever starts today," taunted me, like a splinter, under skin. And that man, tall, dark hair, clean cut, confident in that unbothered way that only comes from certainty. His arm was draped casually around Juliet's waist, like they belonged to each other. My mind tried to make sense of it. Maybe a friend? A cousin? But there was no warmth of sibling closeness. That wasn't how she stood with him. It was something else. Intimate. Undeniable. I clicked his username. The account was gone. Deleted or deactivated, but his handle still lingered. Marcus Riv. I exhaled, slowly, chest tight, as I scrolled back to Juliet's face. It was unmistakably her, slightly younger, perhaps, but the same mouth, the same high cheekbones, the same precise tilt of the head that always struck me as just a little too practiced. But this smile was different, not posed, not curated. It was real. There was affection in that photo. And that disturbed me more than anything. Because in all the time I'd known Juliet, not once had she mentioned anyone named Marcus. Not a word about past relationships. No stories. No offhand anecdotes. Every time I asked about her childhood, she sidestepped the question. Oh, I bounced around a lot. My family's kind of complicated. I try not to live in the past. It always sounded like she was answering a job interview, not building a life with my son. I had chalked it up to being guarded. I figured maybe there was trauma she didn't want to revisit. I respected that. Until now. Now, it felt like something entirely different. Now, it felt like she was hiding. I opened a new tab and typed Juliet Emerson Marcus Rivera, marriage. Nothing. Then I searched Juliet Emerson marriage. Still nothing. But when I tried Juliet Rivera marriage registry, something finally pinged. It wasn't flashy, no photos, no big reveal, just a dry listing on an old registry site, like a forgotten receipt in a drawer no one checks anymore. Juliet Camille Rivera and Marcus Elias Rivera, June. I sat back in my chair and stared at it. The air around me felt still, weighted. 3 years ago. I whispered the date aloud, like I needed to hear it in my own voice to believe it. It didn't make sense. This wasn't just a chapter she'd moved past. This was a locked drawer she'd kept sealed, and now I was prying it open with my bare hands. And if this registry was accurate, if she had married Marcus and never divorced him, then she wasn't just keeping secrets. She was planning a wedding to Logan while still being married to someone else. I glanced around the kitchen, eyes landing on the corkboard by the fridge where Logan's high school graduation photo still hung, his crooked smile, the tassel half fallen over one eye. He'd been such a kind boy, the kind who read library books under the covers, who cried when his hamster died. A boy who believed love was about loyalty. And now, he was marrying a woman who might not even be who she said she was. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling fan, replaying every interaction I'd ever had with Juliet. Her perfect tone, her influencer laugh, the way she always managed to offer compliments that were really insults. She's so lucky to have a mom who bakes. My mother only ever door-dashed. I love that you still wear pearls. It's so vintage. I can't believe Logan grew up in this neighborhood. It's so humble. Every time she spoke, it was a performance, a mask, and I had clapped, nodded, applauded her charm, while she slowly erased me from the picture. But she didn't do this because she thought I'd ruin her wedding. She did it because she thought I'd see through her. And now I had. The next morning, I pulled out a manila folder from the office cabinet, the kind I used to keep tax records and school transcripts in. I wrote Juliet Personal across the tab in block letters and slid the printed registry record inside. Then I went back online. If this marriage had happened, there had to be a license, a certificate, something official, something concrete. I searched county records. I knew the photo from her past had been tagged in Camden. She'd once mentioned spending time in New Jersey during a rough patch. Back then, I thought it was an innocent comment. Now, it was a... I filtered by year, by names. It took time. Hours. Public records are a maze. Slow, outdated, deliberately clunky, but eventually, I found it. Marriage license, Juliet Camille Emerson and Marcus Elias Rivera. Camden County Clerk's Office. June. I clicked the record, printed it, and read it again and again. My hand hovered over the mouse, heart thudding louder than it should have. Then I searched again. Divorce filing, Juliet Rivera, Camden County. Nothing. No record, no update, no annulment, no dissolution, no sign that marriage had ever legally ended. I sat back again, breath caught in my throat. This wasn't paranoia. This wasn't some overprotective mother imagining threats in the shadows. Juliet was still married, and unless she had forged documents or buried a filing in some off-the-books county office, she was about to commit bigamy and rope my son into it. I knew what I had to do. I had to find Marcus Rivera. I didn't eat the next morning. I brewed coffee, set the mug down, and watched it go cold while the cursor blinked on a new browser tab. Marcus Elias Rivera. That name had embedded itself like a splinter behind my eye. I searched it with variations. Quotes. No quotes. Full name. Initials. With Camden, with New Jersey, with missing, even with divorced. Nothing turned up at first. No social media. No LinkedIn. No news articles. It was like he'd been swallowed up by the earth the moment that courthouse photo was taken. But I wasn't new to this. I'd worked a library desk for 14 years. I knew how to dig. I tried employment records, warehouse job listings, contractor sites. I remembered one offhand line Juliet had thrown out months ago, something about how Camden taught her how to hustle. It hadn't meant anything then. Now it rang like a bell. Eventually, I found it, a logistics company, small, low profile, with a job posting dated 6 months ago, entry-level warehouse assistant. The supervisor's name was listed. I picked up the phone and dialed. Hi, I'm looking for someone who may have worked there recently. Marcus Rivera, I said, injecting just enough fake cheer into my voice to sound like an old friend and not an amateur detective. There was a pause. A few keyboard taps. Yeah, Marcus was with us for a little while, the man said. Not anymore, though. Bingo. I pushed a little. Would you happen to have a last known address? I'm trying to get in touch for personal reasons. We're family. He didn't even hesitate. Gave me the street, the building number, even a side note about the unit having bad plumbing. I scribbled it all down, heart pounding in my ears. This was it. My crack in the wall. I didn't know what I expected to find. Maybe a quiet man with a new life. Maybe someone who'd deny it all. Or maybe someone still tangled in Juliet's mess, just like Logan was about to be. Either way, I had to go. I slid the printed marriage license and registry into the folder, tucked in the Instagram screenshots, and grabbed my keys. Camden was 4 hours away. Highway, most of the way. Flat, straight, too much time to think. I didn't call Logan, didn't leave a note. Just drove with one hand on the wheel and the other resting on the folder in the passenger seat like it might vanish if I let go. It was late afternoon when I pulled into the neighborhood. The address was part of a duplex, faded siding, fogged windows, a for rent sign peeling off the frame. I checked the number twice before crossing the street, folder clutched to my chest. I knocked once, then again. For a long moment, nothing. Then movement, shuffling. The door opened an inch. Then wider. There he was, Marcus Rivera. Older than the photo, a little more worn. Hoodie half-zipped, unshaven, sweatpants. He looked like someone who hadn't left the house in days, but it was him. I knew the face. I could have picked him out of a crowd. Marcus, I said. He didn't answer right away, just stared, eyes wary. My name is Claire, I continued. We need to talk. Still nothing. I lifted the manila folders slightly. It's about Juliet. His eyes dropped to the folder. A beat passed, then another. He opened the door wider. What do you want? He asked. To talk, I said. Just 5 minutes. He let me in. The apartment smelled like instant noodles and old carpet, mattress, on the floor, one chair, no pictures, no TV, just a clock on the wall, stopped at 3:40. He sat on the edge of the mattress. I stayed standing. She's marrying my son, I said. Next weekend. His head jerked up. Your son? Logan, I said. They've been together for 2 years. She told him she's never been married. He let out a short laugh, bitter and exhausted. Of course she did. I handed him the folder. He didn't flinch, just took it, flipped through the papers. The marriage license, the screenshots, the registry listing. He nodded once. Yeah, that's us. You're not divorced? I asked, needing to hear it, even if I already knew. He looked up. No, she paid me to disappear. My knees nearly buckled. She what? He sighed, setting the folder aside like it was full of dead weight. 10 grand. Said she'd ruin me if I ever showed up again. I'd just lost my job, got evicted. She found me in a motel, told me I was holding her back, said she had plans, gave me the money and told me to vanish. And you did? What do you think? He said, gesturing to the bare walls. I needed the money. I didn't speak. I sat down slowly, hands still clenched in my lap. She cut me out of the wedding, I said after a while. Told me I made her uncomfortable, said she wanted peace. Marcus snorted. She's terrified someone will blow her cover, that's what she does. She builds these perfect versions of herself, and when the truth gets too close, she burns the whole house down. So this wasn't a mistake, I murmured. This was calculated. She's always calculating, he said. She's good at it. Too good. I looked at him. Really looked at him. He wasn't just tired, he was emptied out. Like whatever Juliet had taken from him wasn't just material, it was internal. And now she was setting up to do the same thing to my son. I swallowed hard. I need you to come with me, I said, to the wedding. Tell the truth. He stared at me like I'd just asked him to jump off a roof. No, he said immediately. No way. She said a lot of things. I pressed. But this isn't about her, it's about Logan. He has no idea who he's marrying. And if you don't tell him, she's going to do this again. You think you'll believe me? Not if it's just you, I said, but I have everything. The license, the photos, your statement. It'll be enough. He looked away. Why should I? He muttered. Why should I get involved again just to get burned? I opened my purse and pulled out my checkbook. I wrote a number. 20,000. I tore the check out and held it up. One day, I said. One truth. He stared at it, hand trembling slightly. You're serious? Dead serious. Marcus didn't take the check right away. He held it like it might catch fire in his hands. The digits on the page must have looked absurd to a man living in a hollow apartment without furniture or a working clock. But the silence between us wasn't just about money. It was about trust, about exhaustion, about a history I couldn't even begin to understand. If I do this, he said finally, voice quiet, we do it my way. I nodded. Deal. He looked down at the check again, then folded it in half and slipped it into his hoodie pocket, like he was afraid the air might change its value. I'll pick you up at 9, I said. Don't be late. He didn't respond, but I saw the smallest nod, the kind you give when there's no turning back. I stepped outside into the cold air and exhaled for the first time in what felt like hours. The sun was setting behind a web of power lines, casting gold over the crumbling sidewalk. I slid into my car, closed the door, and just sat there for a while, letting it settle, letting myself feel what I'd done. I hadn't just poked a hole in Juliet's illusion. I'd torn a seam, and now the whole dress was coming apart. The drive home was long and quiet. I didn't play music, didn't call anyone. The folder rode shotgun, its contents heavier than before. Not just paper now, but evidence, testimony, consequence. When I got home, I didn't go straight to bed. I pulled the wedding binder off the shelf and sat at the kitchen table, flipping page by page. It was full of Juliet's handwriting. Her floral swirls, her meticulous vision. I found payment records in my own pen, down payments I'd fronted, invoices I'd settled. I read every line like it was an indictment. I wasn't just excluded from the wedding. I was financing my own erasure. I stared at the checklist: venue, caterer, quartet, photographer, monogrammed cocktail napkins, imported orchids, silk ribbons, and a signature drink called the Ever After. I closed the binder, not with anger, with resolve. This ends now. The next morning, I called out of work, told them I had a family emergency. It wasn't a lie, not exactly. Then I made a new list. A clean one. Just 2 columns. What I know and what I don't. Under what I know, I wrote, Juliet is still legally married to Marcus. She paid him to disappear. She has a daughter. Marcus says is theirs. Logan knows none of this. Under what I don't. Did she ever file for divorce in a different county? Did she use a different name? Does Logan suspect anything? The last one twisted like a blade. Because part of me had to wonder, did he know something? Not all of it. Maybe, but enough. Enough to make him hesitate, then swallow the doubt because the alternative was worse. I didn't want to believe that. I couldn't. That evening, Logan called. Like nothing was wrong. "Hey, Mom," he said, casual, cheerful. "Did you see the updated seating chart Juliet sent?" "I did," I said. He didn't ask how I felt about not being included. He didn't ask why my name had disappeared. Didn't even flinch. I could hear her in the background, laughing at something, that same performative melody she used for her YouTube vlogs and brunch photo shoots. The sound made my skin tighten. It was all too smooth, too staged, like everything else about her. "How's the caterer?" I asked, light as I could. "Good," Logan said. "They added the butternut tartle you liked." I nodded, even though he couldn't see it. "Sounds nice." There was a pause. "Everything okay?" he asked finally. "Yes," I lied. "Just tired." He didn't push, just said, "Love you," and hung up. I stared at the screen for a long time after. My fingers itched to call him back, to scream, "Why didn't you ask?" But I didn't, because I knew what that silence meant. Not ignorance, denial. And denial was harder to crack than any secret. I stayed up late that night, double-checking everything, the courthouse file, the screenshots, the registry, the photo of Marcus and Juliet in front of that bland gray courthouse, her smile real and unfiltered, his arm around her like he still believed she belonged to him. And the one that haunted me most, Marcus with a little girl on his lap. She had Juliet's eyes. He hadn't said her name, but I didn't need him to. You can't fake that kind of bond. Juliet had told Logan it was her cousin's daughter. Another lie, one more stone in the wall she'd built. But now, I had the wrecking ball. By Saturday night, I had everything ready. 2 copies of every document. Printed, hole-punched, slid into protective sleeves. 1 folder for Marcus, 1 for me. Just in case. Because if I'd learned anything from Juliet, it was that perfection is a performance, and performances collapse when you show the audience what's happening backstage. At 8:57 the next morning, I pulled up in front of Marcus's building. He was waiting on the steps, shoulders hunched inside a wrinkled button-up. Same shoes, same hollow expression. I handed him a tie as he slid into the passenger seat. "Borrowed it from my neighbor's kid," I said. He nodded. We didn't talk on the drive. There wasn't anything left to say. Just 2 people heading toward a truth too big to say out loud. The wedding was set in one of those country clubs with imported marble floors and chandeliers the size of boats. Everything sparkled, overdone, over-polished, over everything. Juliet's dream venue. She'd been talking about it for months, how she wanted the guests to feel like they'd stepped into a lifestyle spread, how the photos would go viral on Pinterest. I'd seen the mood boards. I'd paid for half of them. I pulled into the parking circle like I belonged there. No one questioned me. No one stopped. Marcus, either. That's the thing about places like this. If you walk like you're supposed to be there, people don't ask. Inside, guests were milling around, champagne flutes in hand, taking selfies in front of a floral arch I had paid $1,600 for. I recognized some of the vendors, the caterer, the planner, the florist, all people I'd written checks to. All of them looked right past me, like I didn't exist. But I didn't flinch. We weren't here to be seen. We were here to be heard. Marcus walked beside me, his hand clenched around the folder I'd given him, the documents inside like coiled wire. I had my own copy in my purse. Backup, just in case. Juliet hadn't seen us yet. We stood near the back, half-shielded, behind a group of guests, taking turns posing with a gold-rimmed photo frame. The music was soft, the mood light, all pastel and Prosecco. Then I saw her. Juliet. She was radiant, in the most clinical, coldly perfected way. Her dress fit her like it had been engineered. Her makeup was flawless, not a pore in sight. She laughed too loudly at something a bridesmaid said, her smile wide enough to show every professionally whitened tooth. But her eyes were scanning. Even through the crowd, I saw the flicker of doubt. And then, she saw me. Her whole body went still. The laugh stopped mid-breath. Her smile froze. And then she saw Marcus. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. Her eyes darted to her bridesmaids, to the crowd, to the exits. Panic rippled across her features like a crack in glass. She turned and walked, fast toward the back of the venue, one hand lifting the hem of her dress as she disappeared through a side door. I didn't follow. I didn't need to. This wasn't going to be handled backstage. This needed to happen where everyone could see it. Marcus looked at me, his jaw tight. "She's going to try something," he muttered. I nodded. "Let her. We're not here for a fight." We waited. The quartet started playing something. One of those classical pop mashups that always felt like a cover band pretending to be royalty. Guests began moving to their seats. A hush rolled across the crowd as the officiant stepped up and cleared his throat. I watched everything from the back row. Logan appeared at the front, adjusting his tie, smiling nervously at the crowd. My heart ached. He looked so young, so ready, so unaware. Then the music shifted and Juliet walked in. Her face was composed, serene. She looked like nothing had happened, like we weren't standing there, like her whole world wasn't teetering on a lie. She didn't look at me. She didn't look at Marcus. She just walked. The officiant began his welcome, thanking everyone for coming, talking about love, commitment, trust, words that, in that moment, sounded like daggers, wrapped in lace. Then came the moment. "If anyone here has reason these two should not be joined in marriage, speak now or forever hold your peace." I stepped forward. So did Marcus. The sound that swept through the room was half gasp, half intake of breath. Heads turned, chairs shifted. We walked slowly, steadily, eyes forward like we were walking into court. Logan's face twisted in confusion as he watched us approach. His smile vanished. Juliet didn't move. Her arms dropped to her sides. Her veil trembled. I stopped 3 feet from my son. "Logan," I said, calm, measured. "I need you to look at this." I held out the folder. For a second, he didn't move, just stared at it, like it might explode. Juliet's voice cut in sharp, panicked. "What is this? Why are you doing this?" I didn't answer her. I didn't even look at her. Logan took the folder, slowly, like it was a bomb. He opened it. First page, the marriage license. I saw his eyes scan it, stop, reread. Then the second page, registry screenshot. Third, courthouse photo. His lips moved without sound. Then came the final page. The photo of Marcus with a little girl on his lap. The one Juliet had told Logan was her cousin's child. Marcus stepped forward. His voice was steady. "But look, that's my daughter," he said. "And Juliet's." The air was sucked out of the room. No one moved. The officiant looked frozen in place. Juliet's mouth opened, then shut, like she couldn't quite reboot her expression. "She told me to disappear 3 years ago," Marcus continued. "Paid me 10 grand to keep quiet, so she could move on, without paperwork, without baggage." Juliet lunged forward. "He's lying," she said, voice shrill. "He's obsessed with me. He's trying to ruin my life." She turned to me. "You planned this. You've always hated me. You're jealous." I didn't move, didn't blink, didn't give her the satisfaction. Then Logan spoke. "You lied," he said, his voice low, cold, controlled. "You lied about everything." Juliet's hand reached for Logan, but he stepped back like she'd touched a live wire. "I did it for us," she said quickly, the words tumbling out of her. "I wanted a clean start. That marriage meant nothing. He meant nothing. I was trying to protect you." Marcus laughed once. Not cruelly, just bitter, like a man watching the same movie for the 100th time. "She told me," he said, "that our daughter was going to live with her aunt while she rebuilt her brand, that she'd get in the way of the kind of life she was planning." A hush spread across the guests. Chairs creaked. People shifted uncomfortably. Someone near the back whispered, "Did she just say daughter?" Juliet turned, her perfectly powdered face cracking beneath the weight of exposure. "This isn't what it looks like," she said. "I swear to God." "Stop," Logan said. Just that. One word. But it was final, like a gavel. Juliet froze. His voice didn't rise. He didn't yell. There was no dramatic accusation, no tearing off of rings, just a sharp edge of clarity that sliced cleaner than a scream. He turned to the officiant. "We're done here." The officiant looked at Juliet, then at me, then back to Logan, completely unsure what to do. But Logan was already walking toward me. When he reached my side, he said nothing at first. Then, softly, "Let's go." And we did. Me, Logan, and Marcus. We walked out together, down the aisle that had been lined with rose petals and intention. I didn't turn around. I didn't need to. The silence said enough. Gasps trailed behind us like smoke. Confused murmurs followed like ghosts. I could feel the stares on my back, but I didn't flinch. Because Logan walked beside me, folder still in his hands, face unreadable, but not broken. When we reached the doors, I glanced sideways and caught a glimpse of Juliet's parents. Her mother looked like she'd seen a ghost. Her father kept his eyes down. No one said a word. Outside, the sunlight hit me like a baptism. I exhaled, not with triumph, but with something deeper. Relief. Peace. The kind that doesn't come from being right, but from being believed. At the car, Marcus stopped. "I'm not trying to stay involved," he said. "I did what I said I'd do. That's it." I nodded. "You held up your end. Thank you." He handed me back the tie. Didn't say another word, just turned and walked down the sidewalk, his back straight, his steps slow but free. I slid into the driver's seat. Logan took the passenger side. Still, he said nothing. His hands rested on his knees, fingers twitching, just slightly. "You okay?" I asked. Finally. He nodded. "I think I knew," he said. "Not all of it, but something. I just didn't want to be wrong about her, about the life I thought I was building." I didn't offer comfort, not yet. He wasn't ready. We drove in silence. When I dropped him off at his apartment, he paused before getting out. "Thanks, Mom." That was it. Not dramatic, not emotional, just clean. I watched him walk up the stairs, still in his wedding suit, the tie now loose around his neck. He didn't look back. He didn't have to. That night, I poured a glass of wine and sat at the kitchen table with the wedding binder. I opened it slowly, like I was reading a diary that no longer belonged to me. I went page by page. Caterer, quartet, photographer, venue, signature cocktail. Every item was listed under my name, every contract signed with my hand, every deposit made from my account. I started dialing, one by one. The brunch? Cancelled. The quartet? Cancelled. The open bar? Pulled. The photographer? Rescinded. The custom linens, the fancy calligraphy place cards. Even the spa appointments Juliet had scheduled on my credit card for the day after, gone. I didn't yell. I didn't post on Facebook. I didn't call Juliet's mother or leave voicemails for her bridesmaids. I just undid every string she'd tied around me. Line by line, I erased her wedding like she had tried to erase me. And you know what? No one questioned it. Every vendor had a cancellation clause. The refunds weren't full, but they were enough. Juliet had thought she was untouchable because she hadn't paid for a thing, but that was the part she forgot. The money wasn't hers. It was mine. And now it was gone. Just like the illusion she built. I didn't do it to punish her. I did it to reclaim the part of myself I'd handed over while trying to keep the peace. Because peace built on silence isn't peace. It's captivity. And I wasn't going to live like that anymore. Logan didn't call for 3 weeks. Not a text. Not a voicemail. Not even one of those typing bubbles that show up and disappear like ghost thoughts. And I didn't chase him. I didn't send messages asking if he was okay. I didn't drop off food or pretend I had something he left behind. I just let the silence stretch between us like a bridge neither of us was ready to cross. Because I knew that kind of silence. It wasn't anger. It wasn't rejection. It was grief. The kind of grief that doesn't make a sound. The kind that settles like dust in a house that used to be full of noise. So I waited. That's what you do when you're a mother. You wait in quiet rooms while your child finds his voice again. In the meantime, I filled the days. I cleaned the house twice over, rearranged the pantry, alphabetized the spice rack. I went back to work, took a few extra shifts at the library just to keep my hands moving. Didn't talk about the wedding, not to my sister, not to the florist who kept calling about the unclaimed centerpiece vases, not to anyone. I carried the story inside me, like a sealed envelope. Not because I was ashamed, but because I didn't need the world's validation to know what was true. Then, one Sunday, I came home from the grocery store and found a brown paper bag on my porch. No note, no label. Inside was a plastic deli container of chicken soup from a spot halfway across the city. My favorite, the one I used to drive 45 minutes for when I was sick. I knew. A week later, a text. Do you still have my old toolkit? I did. I left it on the porch. That night, I heard the screen door creak sometime after midnight. The soft thunk of footsteps on the wood. I didn't get up. The next message came 4 days later. Hey, do you remember that tiny screwdriver that fit the laptop hinge? Was it in there? It wasn't, but we stayed on the phone for 8 minutes. Talked about the weather, about a strange client email he'd gotten. He laughed once, not much, just an. That's how it went for a while. Not a flood, just a trickle. One breadcrumb at a time. He didn't apologize, and I didn't ask him to. I didn't want the words. I wanted the effort, and slowly, it came. He started showing up on Sundays, quietly, casually. No announcement. He brought coffee once, helped fix a loose cabinet hinge. Another time, stayed long enough to ask how I was sleeping, then left. I didn't push. I didn't bring up Juliet. I didn't ask what he was thinking, or feeling, or regretting. I just let him be there. That was enough. Then one night, he brought someone with him. A woman. He introduced her as Nina. Said they were just friends. She wore her hair in a loose braid and had a messenger bag slung over one shoulder. She handed me a bottle of wine as soon as she stepped into the kitchen. I looked it up, she said, smiling. It pairs well with pasta, which I heard is your specialty. I blinked. Not because of the wine, but because she'd taken the time to learn. During dinner, she asked questions, not polite ones, but real ones. About the photo of Logan in 3rd grade that still hangs beside the fridge. About the recipe I used for the sauce. About how long I'd lived in the house. She looked at Logan when he talked. Not to perform interest, but to actually hear him. And Logan, he softened. He didn't try to impress her, he just existed. For the first time in a long time, I saw him breathe in someone's presence. After dinner, Nina helped clear the plates without being asked. She wiped the counter while humming softly and asked me if I still had any of those lemon cookies Logan apparently talked about. And that's when I knew. Whatever Juliet had been, Nina wasn't. She wasn't perfect. She wasn't polished. She was present. And that was worth more than all the chandeliers in the world. The following Sunday, Logan called. Not a text, not a voicemail, a real call. Hey, he said, voice lighter than I remembered. Nina was wondering, would it be weird if we did something small? Small? I asked. Like a ceremony. Backyard, maybe. Nothing huge, just a few friends, something honest. I swallowed a breath. Of course, I said, that sounds perfect. We'd like it to be here, he added. Here. Not a venue, not a country club, not a fantasy. Here. At home. They got married in my backyard. No marble, no chandeliers, no orchestral mashups echoing through imported stone. Just folding chairs I borrowed from the church 2 blocks over. A string of cafe lights I pulled out of the garage, and a white sheet hung from the porch railing because Nina said it reminded her of summers at her grandmother's. I didn't ask for Pinterest boards. I didn't demand RSVP cards or curated playlists or place cards shaped like leaves. This wasn't about it was about showing up. Logan built the arch himself. Cut the wood, sanded it, stained it, a warm walnut color. I watched him haul it across town in the back of a borrowed pickup, his sleeves rolled up, his hair damp with sweat. He didn't complain once. Nina's dress wasn't designed by anyone with a label. There was no train, no cathedral-length veil, no stylist fussing with the hem. She walked barefoot across the grass, the dress catching in the clover, and when she reached the arch, she smiled at me like we were already family. And just like that, I knew. This time, no one was pretending. I made the food myself. Lasagna. Yes, the same one Juliet had once called a bit too rich. A giant bowl of roasted vegetables. 2 baguettes from the bakery down the street. I poured the wine. I baked the cake, lopsided and cracked on one side because I'd misjudged the oven temperature halfway through. Nobody cared. It was perfect. We didn't have a DJ, just an old Bluetooth speaker and someone's phone connected to a playlist titled Real Love. I remember looking out over the backyard, the twinkle lights, the chairs set in uneven rows, the handful of people who mattered, and thinking, this is what it was always supposed to be. No performance, no spectacle, just truth. Logan pulled me aside before the ceremony. He was wearing a simple dark gray shirt and slacks, no tie, no jacket. His sleeves were rolled, just like when he was a teenager fixing the sink under the kitchen counter for the 5th time. Will you walk me down the aisle? He asked. I must have blinked 3 times before I could speak. Not because I was shocked, but because part of me had stopped believing I'd ever be fully seen again. I nodded, too overcome to say anything that wouldn't come out in a tremble. So that's what we did. We walked together, no music, no whispers, just the sound of our footsteps on the grass and the rustle of leaves overhead. My hand in his, solid, real. The ceremony itself was short. Nina's friend, a non-profit lawyer who moonlit as an officiant, read a few lines from letters to a young poet. Then they exchanged vows. Not rehearsed, not flawless, just them. Logan stumbled over a word. Nina laughed softly and wiped her eye. They held hands the whole time, not as a performance, as an anchor. And when it was over, when the backyard burst into quiet cheers and clinking glasses, Nina turned to me, took both my hands, and looked me in the eye. Thank you, she said, for raising the man I get to love. No swelling music, no slow-motion camera pan. Just that. A single sentence that made the whole thing worth it. The phone call, the drive to Camden, the folder, the confrontation in the aisle, all of it. Not because I won, but because the truth had a seat at the table again. Later, when everyone had gone, I sat on the back steps in my bare feet, a glass of leftover wine in a mason jar, watching the light from the last string bulb flicker over the empty lawn. My heels were inside, kicked under the table. My hair had come loose. My cardigan was dotted with sauce stains I didn't care to scrub. And still, I felt more beautiful than I had in years. Not because of how I looked, but because there was nothing left to prove. Just peace, earned peace, the kind you fight for, the kind that stays. I didn't get a thank you card from Juliet. I never heard from her again. Not an apology, not an explanation, nothing. And I don't care if I ever do. She became a footnote, a woman who tried to rewrite the truth and got erased by her own edits. But Logan is happy. And Nina is real. And me, I'm not just the mother anymore. I'm the witness, the survivor, the proof that love doesn't mean silence. That peace can be loud if you fight for it the right way. That, sometimes, the best revenge is being remembered. The Monday after the backyard wedding, I opened the wedding binder one last time. Not Logan and Nina's, Juliet's. The one I had poured hours into. The one filled with flower samples, vendor quotes, and fabric swatches she pretended to appreciate. The one that, for a while, I thought was a bridge between us. I laid it out on the kitchen table like a body I needed to bury. I flipped through the pages slowly, like peeling back the layers of a bad dream I had finally woken up from. Venue, cancelled. Quartet, cancelled. Caterer, cancelled. Calligraphy artist, refunded partial deposit. Photographer, contract nullified. Signature cocktail designer, ghosted me. But I filed a claim anyway. Every page, every charge, every scribbled note in the margins reminded me of how much I had given, not just financially, but emotionally, willingly, stupidly. She never paid a dime, not one. She handed me a fantasy and let me fund it, then discarded me when my presence didn't match the aesthetic. I ran my fingers over a page labeled Post-Wedding Spa Day, a full itinerary of services scheduled under my name. 3 massages, 2 facials, 1 seaweed wrap. 2 weeks before the ceremony, she'd added it to the binder like she was jotting down a grocery list. That stung more than anything. Because it wasn't about extravagance. It was about entitlement. She thought the money made her untouchable, but the money was mine. And now, it was gone. And with it, so was she. I gathered all the pages, ripped them from their plastic sleeves, and shoved them into a trash bag. The swatches, the invoices, the printed email threads, it all went in. No ceremony. No regret. When I finished, I slid the empty binder into the back of the coat closet. Not to save, but to forget. Juliet didn't reach out. Not the day after. Not the week after. Nothing. I imagine she scrambled at first, tried to rebook vendors, call in favors, repaint the story with a brush dipped in blame. But none of it mattered anymore. Because her name wasn't on anything. She never lifted a finger. Never made a payment. Never signed a contract. She built a kingdom on air. And I'd erased it, without raising my voice. I didn't do it to ruin her. I did it to remind myself that I wasn't a background character in someone else's movie, that I could walk away without burning down the set, that I could choose my silence, not as surrender, but as survival. Sometimes power is quiet. And sometimes, the loudest thing you can do is say nothing at all. People always think confrontation is about shouting, but it's not. It's about truth. And truth doesn't always need volume. It just needs presence. Logan came by the following weekend. He didn't bring Nina that time, just a tool belt and a bag of groceries. Thought I'd fix the hinge on the screen door, he said, already stepping inside. I nodded, not asking if something was broken, or if he just needed a task. We didn't talk much while he worked. I chopped vegetables for dinner. He drilled quietly in the doorway. The air between us didn't hum with tension anymore. It didn't ache with what wasn't said. It was still, settled. After dinner, he stayed for a while, longer than usual. We sat on the couch like we used to when he was a teenager, and the two of us would watch reruns of cooking shows, pretending we had the time or ingredients to make anything from them. He didn't bring up Juliet. Neither did I. Not because we were avoiding it, but because it didn't need revisiting. That chapter was closed, stamped, filed. We'd walked through fire and made it out the other side. What was left wasn't bitterness, it was clarity. Before he left, he stood at the door and turned back. "Did you keep the photo?" he asked. "What photo?" "The one from the wedding. The one with the arch and the lights." "I did." He nodded. "I might want a copy." I smiled. "Of course." He stepped onto the porch. "Oh," he added, turning halfway. "Nina said to tell you the lasagna was better than anything she's ever tasted." I laughed. A real one, from the center of my chest. "Tell her I have a new batch of sauce in the freezer." He left after that. Quietly. But the house didn't feel empty this time. It felt full. Not with noise, but with meaning. With the kind of peace that doesn't demand attention. The kind that's earned. That night, I stood by the window with a mug of tea and looked out into the backyard. The arch was still there. The chairs had been returned, the lights taken down, but the grass still remembered. The ground still held the imprint of feet, of vows, of laughter and truth. No marble, no orchestra, no curated hashtags. Just love. The kind that shows up when it matters. The kind that doesn't ask for applause. There's a kind of silence that feels like punishment. And then there's the kind that feels like healing. That's the silence that lived in my house now. It wasn't empty. It wasn't cold. It didn't echo. It just existed. Like a warm quilt draped over the noise that used to be here. Like the house finally had nothing left to brace for. I stopped checking my phone for Logan's name. Not because I didn't want to hear from him, but because I trusted now that I would, when it mattered. That trust had taken longer to rebuild than the wedding arch. But it was here, quiet and steady. Sometimes he called. Sometimes he didn't. Sometimes he came by without warning, letting the screen door slap shut behind him like he'd always lived here, even when he hadn't for years. One Tuesday afternoon, I came home from the library and found a loaf of rosemary bread on the kitchen counter. No note, no message, just a plastic-wrapped thank you left on the cutting board. I smiled and made soup that night. Ate it alone, but not lonely. Nina showed up more regularly now too. She had a way of entering rooms like she'd already been invited, even if she hadn't been. She'd sit on the kitchen stool, ask me about the herbs I grew in coffee cans along the windowsill, and listen like my answers mattered. One day, she found an old photo of Logan, 8 years old, missing a front tooth, holding a giant library book upside down. She laughed, genuine and unfiltered. "He still reads like that when he's tired," she said, running a thumb along the frame. She never made me feel like a mother-in-law. She made me feel like an accomplice in something good. The three of us started spending Sunday afternoons together. No formal invite, no schedule, just a rhythm we fell into. Logan helping me fix things around the house. Nina peeling apples at the sink, me baking pies I swore I'd never make again after turning 60. Once, Logan reached over during dinner and grabbed the salt without asking where it was. That tiny moment, his comfort, his memory of home, nearly broke me in the best way. After dinner, we sat on the back steps and passed around a bottle of wine. The arch still stood in the yard. I don't know if we're supposed to seal it or just let the rain age it, Logan said. Nina shrugged. Let nature do what it wants. It's more honest that way. Logan looked at me. What do you think? I looked at the arch, then at them. The grass beneath it. The leftover twinkle light still tangled around one of the posts. Let it fade, I said. That way, you'll remember it wasn't supposed to be permanent. It was just No one said anything after that. We didn't need to. Truth doesn't always need to be preserved. Sometimes it just needs to be felt once, and left where it happened. Later that night, when they'd gone, I rinsed the dishes and set the last 2 wine glasses upside down on a dish towel. I caught my reflection in the microwave door, messy hair, a sauce stain, on my sleeve, eyes softer than they'd been in years. I used to think motherhood was about sacrifice, about giving until there was nothing left. But now I understood something different. It wasn't about giving endlessly, it was about giving wisely, and knowing when to stop giving to the wrong things. I'd spent too many years offering pieces of myself to people who saw me as scenery. Juliet had been the final lesson. She didn't break me, she revealed me. And in that revelation, I found a version of myself I hadn't seen in decades. Not the mother, not the planner, not the problem solver, just me, Claire. The woman who drinks wine from mason jars, who bakes her son's favorite cookies with too much vanilla, who likes quiet mornings and long walks and dog-eared books. I remembered her, and I liked her. I started journaling again, just a few lines at night. Nothing dramatic, nothing polished, just observations, feelings, little things, like how Logan always tapped twice before entering, even when the door was open, like how Nina brought her own apron, but always borrowed my measuring spoons, like how the house felt lighter now, like it was finally exhaling. It had taken everything falling apart for it to come together, and somehow, that made it more beautiful. I never told anyone about the folder. I kept it for a while, stored in the back of the filing cabinet, tucked between old insurance papers and warranties for appliances I no longer owned. Then one morning, I shredded it. All of it. The marriage license, the screenshots, the registry, the photo of Marcus and the little girl. Not because it didn't matter, but because it no longer defined anything. I didn't need proof anymore. I had peace. And peace, once it settles, doesn't ask for witnesses. It just stays. I used to believe closure came with ceremony, final words, cleaned up endings, applause, but I've learned better. Real closure is quiet. It arrives like a shift in the air, barely noticeable at first, and then suddenly you realize you can breathe easier. That was how it felt on an ordinary Thursday morning, as I stood by the window, sipping lukewarm coffee from a chipped mug, watching sunlight crawl across the backyard. The arch was still out there, weather-worn now, a little sag in the left beam. The white sheet had long since been taken down, folded and packed away with Nina's handwriting on the box. Summer wedding. I didn't know if they'd keep it forever or donate it or forget it altogether, but that wasn't the point. It had done its job. It had held up something real. Now it could rest. Like I was finally learning to. I had taken the day off from the library. Not for anything special, just because the stillness felt earned. Because I didn't want to spend the day helping strangers find what they needed when I finally felt like I had everything I needed right here. The house was clean, but lived in. There was a lemon cake cooling on the counter, a stack of books waiting by the couch. The radio hummed low, playing something instrumental, and I didn't feel behind. I didn't feel like I needed to prove anything to anyone. I wasn't trying to fix or plan or make space for someone else's chaos. I was just existing, and for the first time in what felt like years, that was enough. The phone rang around noon. Logan. I answered with a smile already curling at the edges of my mouth. Hey, I said. Hey, he echoed. You busy? Not even a little. There was a pause, the kind that used to feel loaded but now felt like comfort. Nina and I were thinking of stopping by, he said. She wants to show you something. Of course. I didn't ask what. I didn't need to. They arrived 40 minutes later, holding hands and wearing matching soft grins that made them look more like teammates than newlyweds. Nina held a small cardboard box in her arms. Is that what I think it is? I asked, squinting at the label. She nodded and set it down gently on the dining table. Then she opened the flaps. Inside was a stack of printed pages, neatly arranged, with handwritten notes in the margins. What is this? Nina smiled. It's the beginning of something. I've been writing a book. Logan stepped forward. It's based on a case she worked, about identity, survival, how truth changes depending on who's holding it. She looked at me. And I wanted you to read the first draft. I stared at her, startled in the best way. Me? She nodded. You understand the kind of silence I'm writing about. The kind that doesn't mean nothing. The kind that means everything. I sat down slowly, reached for the first page. Her handwriting was clear, purposeful. She wasn't asking for approval. She was offering something sacred. Trust. And that, I think, was the most beautiful shift of all, being trusted again. Not for my money, or my ability to organize a party, or to keep peace by biting my tongue, but for the shape of my mind, my memory, my insight. That was something Juliet never gave me. She saw me as a hurdle. Nina saw me as a person. I read through the first few pages in silence while they sat on the couch, Logan absent-mindedly rubbing her shoulder. Her writing was sharp, deep, compassionate. The kind of voice that didn't flinch when things got hard. After a while, I looked up. This is powerful, I said. It's not just a story, it's a mirror. Nina's eyes shimmered. That's what I hoped you'd say. I set the pages down, heart fuller than it had been in years. This is your truth, I added, and it's going to help someone else survive theirs. We spent the rest of the afternoon talking about writing, about love, about the ways people try to outrun their pasts, and the rare times they don't have to anymore. When they left, I watched them walk down the porch steps together side by side. No distance, no performance, just presence. After they drove off, I went to the backyard. The grass was a little overgrown. The edges near the porch had gone dry from the last heat wave. I'd meant to water it. I'd forgotten, but I didn't rush to fix it. I stood at the arch and ran my hand along the edge of the wood. It was rougher now, stained by rain, discolored in patches, but that was what made it beautiful. Proof that it had stood through weather. Proof that it had been used for something honest. I reached up and removed the last bit of ribbon, white, frayed, sun-faded, and let it fall into my palm. I didn't cry. I just smiled and walked back inside. The last page of Nina's manuscript sat on my kitchen table for 3 days. I didn't reread it. I didn't annotate it like I had the others. I just left it there, open, undisturbed. A quiet altar to something sacred. On the third morning, I folded it gently, slid it into a clean envelope, and placed it in a drawer beside old family photos and birthday cards. I couldn't bring myself to throw away, not because I needed to keep it safe, but because I needed a reminder of what survival looked like, what truth looked like, what it meant to be seen and trusted and heard, not just by the people you love, but by the person staring back at you in the mirror every morning. I looked older now, softer in some places, harder in others, but I didn't mind. Scars, after all, are proof that healing happened. They say nothing is ever really forgotten, just rewritten, repackaged, reframed. And for a long time, I feared that's what would happen to me. That I would be rewritten into someone else's version of the truth. That I would be reduced to the bitter mother, the possessive parent, the woman who couldn't let go. But I was never trying to hold on to Logan. I was trying to hold on to what was true. And now I didn't have to hold so tightly, because the truth was out in the open, breathing, walking, eating lemon cake on a Wednesday afternoon, while Nina read aloud, edits from her laptop, and Logan helped patch the side gate. It was in the quiet space between us, in the way Logan paused to ask if I needed anything from the store, in the way Nina slipped me a thank you note with the grocery receipt, in the way no one apologized for the past anymore, because we didn't need to. We'd moved beyond the wreckage. And we'd done it without turning to ash. A few weeks later, Logan hosted a small dinner. He and Nina had just signed the lease for a new apartment. Sunny windows, an old clawfoot tub, creaky floorboards, and a lemon tree on the balcony that Nina already adored. They invited me over to celebrate. There were no speeches. No grand moments. Just bowls of pasta, mismatched chairs, jazz humming through an old Bluetooth speaker. After dinner, Logan handed me a gift, a small square box, wrapped in newspaper and tied with kitchen twine. I opened it slowly. Inside was a photo in a simple wooden frame. It was from their wedding. Not the group shots, not the posed ones under the arch. It was a candid. I was walking with Logan down the makeshift aisle, his hand tucked gently into the crook of my arm. We were both laughing, mouths open, eyes squinted, heads tilted just slightly toward each other. I stared at it for a long time. It wasn't beautiful in the traditional sense. The lighting was uneven, the background blurry, but it was real. More real than any portrait I'd ever seen. I didn't know this was taken, I said, my voice catching. Neither did we, Nina said softly. A friend sent it later. Logan reached over and touched my hand. It felt like the only photo that mattered. That night, when I got home, I placed the frame on the bookshelf in the living room, next to an old ceramic vase Logan made in 5th grade, and a worn copy of To the Lighthouse. I didn't light a candle or play a song. I just sat with it, let it live there without needing to explain why. Some things don't need meaning added. They are the meaning. I think about Juliet sometimes. Not often, just in flashes. I don't hate her. I'm not even sure I resent her. I just understand now. Some people can only survive by building lies tall enough to stand inside. And when someone threatens to knock down even one wall, they panic, they fight, they erase. But I was never her enemy. I was the mirror she couldn't bear to look into. Because I saw her. And people like her don't want to be seen. Not fully. Not truthfully. They want to be adored, controlled, performed. But truth? Truth doesn't perform. It just waits. And when the lights go down, it's still there, quiet, unshakable, and patient. Waiting to be remembered. One morning, I sat on the back porch with a fresh cup of coffee. The air was crisp. The kind that tingled in your nose and made you want to pull your cardigan tighter. I watched the breeze move through the backyard. The arch was gone now. Logan and Nina had taken it apart and repurposed the wood for their garden boxes. But in its place, they'd planted rosemary. Nina said it was symbolic. Remembrance, grounding, resilience. It grew fast, bright green and sturdy. And in the stillness of that morning, I realized something. I hadn't just protected Logan. I'd protected myself. From silence. From erasure. From the lie that peace meant staying quiet. Because peace doesn't come from pretending nothing's wrong. It comes from standing in the middle of the storm and refusing to be moved. From saying, this is who I am, this is what I know, and I will not vanish for your comfort. That's what love is. Not just giving, but remaining, rooted, present. I took one last sip of coffee, let the warmth settle in my chest, and whispered out loud to no one in particular. I'm still here.